Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Hi, friends. How's everybody doing today?
Good. I'm looking at the forecast.
Brett's face. He was like,
We're like, I don't know. As of the recording today, not when this post, whenever it posts, but as of recording, I looked at the forecast for next week, and it's supposed to be
oh my gosh,
50s in the morning and 70s during the day. So I'm pretty excited about that. Pretty excited.
Listen, next week is kind of an important week, so the fact the high is 80 on it, what should be a national holiday, is pretty impressive. And for those of you going, what is this day she's talking about? It's my birthday, so
what's the day?
Alexis national holiday?
August 26th, high of 80, I believe.
What do you
so.
do? You all have, as people who have known Alexis for a while, do you all have a term for that day?
Alexis Day. I mean,
yeah, I call it the annual celebration of the day we got what we deserve.
Yeah. Oh. AKA Karma Day.
Have the day you deserve. I have that on a t-shirt. And if people are offended by it, well, then maybe you should be.
I've got a similar shirt. Mine says treat yourself. Okay. Treat yourself, Alexis. Just treat yourself.
Awesome. Well, on that note of, cooler weather coming, what plant, this is a plant podcast, I know I usually have a food question, but what plant are you most excited to see this fall? Just plants in general. It could be trees, can be flowers, whatever you're into.
This fall.
What plant are you most excited about seeing for fall?
I'm just gonna say, so we have a guest joining us, and we're gonna hear from him in a second. But I really want to hear Chad's answer first, unless this is putting him on the spot in a way that he feels uncomfortable.
I'm going to make him pick his favorite fall tree.
I was trying to give him like an easy thing to get into.
Well,
and Brett's like, on the spot.
I view podcasting as a combat sport, so.
This is a very challenging question. There's so many great things about fall. I will say different fungal growth. There's so many different fungi, and so it's really cool to get out and see all of those different mushrooms that come up, so many different varieties.
Yeah, hopefully we get some rain so they actually want to come out. Like, I don't know about you all over there, but over in my parts, it's a little crispy.
It was dry at Red River Gorge a few days ago, and there was mushrooms everywhere in the gorge. They've had must have had a small shower, but it's as many mushrooms, and it was dry there, and it was as many mushrooms as I'd ever seen in the gorge.
Wow.
Just 3 or 4 days ago. I couldn't believe it. I just must have hit it at the perfect time. It was all kinds of stuff. But
that's kind of, to tie it back to one of our previous episodes, it starts to cool off a little bit, and some of that cool potential moist conditions favors that fungal growth that we don't want on the leaves of our plants. But the fungus that we get in the forest and other places is quite the vibe. That's a great answer, Chad. Man.
Alexis
really set the bar high for the rest of us. What do you all? Do you all have?
I'm not going to pick the cliche, maple sunset series or whatever. I'm going to go with sour wood. I'm going to go with a good understory tree, a good native. So I like those. I mean, there's so many. Like you said, Chad, in the fall it's hard to pick. I mean. Because for me, fall means all the plants, all the fun plant stuff. But yeah, as far as a tree goes, I like the sour woods when they start to change.
Well, I'm excited because I planted a black gum like 2 years ago, and my Nissa, she should really start to show off this year. So I'm very excited for her because she still has all of her leaves somehow, even though it's been well dry. So I'm like, yay!
She's thriving.
We have on the back of our farm, I took a picture of it just 2 days ago while my husband was fixing fence, a gigantic sassafras tree. Like, I didn't realize how big it is. And I took a picture and he looks so tiny next to it. So I'm really excited to see how bright that's going to be. And I've been finding so many little baby sassafras trees popping up in my flower beds. And I'm like, they can't stay here anyways because they can't grow next to the house. So, and we all know they don't transplant well, but I've still been popping them up and potting them up, and I'm
want one so bad.
Well, there's one in the front of my house. I'll dig it up and we'll see if it'll survive.
You can do it. I have faith in you.
You should think about turning that into a little bonsai
A
there.
bonsai. Who would have thought that's what Brett would have said?
Now, I
One
don't know
track
that you could
mind.
use
What
that
can I
for
say?
seasonal, Brett. Yeah, what's yours? It can't be anything evergreen because do they change much? I mean, they do, but
Yeah.
you
I would say for me, cutleaf sumac is this has
Ooh,
like this
yeah, that's the dark
insane.
red, isn't it? I mean,
The one that I have at least turns like bright, vivid orange, like
orange.
Oh,
dreamsicle
yeah.
orange. I'm not really sure. I got it as seed, started it from seed, and I don't know if it's some kind of weird cultivar or what, but yeah, it's
Just
one that I
glows when
have.
the sun hits it
It's
just
so
right.
crazy. Yeah, it's like even more so than a sugar maple or
I need to look that up. Cut leaf.
yeah. I have a couple of them left over, and I know you mentioned you were interested in those, so maybe I have to give one to Sean, and then I'll see if I can hook you up. But
Plant swap.
I know. I was like,
Podcast
look at
plant swap.
us talking about sharing plants with each other.
Sharing trees, sharing
Yeah.
wood products, potential wood products seems
Very
like really
fitting.
on brand for today.
yeah, well, we're joined by this esteemed guest, and I wonder, Chad, if you could just tell us, some of the more boring stuff like what your title is and those types of things, but also the really interesting stuff, which is pretty much every project that you touch seems to be really, really cool. So we'd love to hear a little bit about who you are, where you're coming from, but also more importantly, what you do and what you're into.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate this opportunity to be with you all. And so my name is Chad Niman, and I'm called a forest product specialist. And what all of that means is that I work a lot with our wood industries across the state and help them to try to develop markets, help them to try to train their employees. We used to have a 2-year program in the state, and we don't have that anymore. So we try to fill the gap. And up at the Wood Utilization Center is where we do a lot of that work. I'm here at the Robinson Center today over in Jackson, Kentucky. And so I serve as the director of our Wood Utilization Center there. We have a lot of educational activities and industry employee trainings that take place there each year. About 1,500 folks will come visit. And we get to teach them wood drying, wood manufacturing, how to grade lumber, grading of logs, all kinds of systems like that that help them to standardize and assess the value that they have.
Yeah, well, I think is one of the interesting things that when I hear you talk about some of the projects you're involved with, there's this blend or this kind of integration of the practical kind of harvest and evaluation side, basically the plant side, looking at the plants, seeing what they need, and then we getting the plants out. And then there's also this kind of market development side, marketing. We talk about the development of markets, and then the marketing of the products. And like, is that kind of like, is that integrated by necessity, or is that something you all have chosen to do, or is that what's the approach
That's a
there?
really good question, Brett. And honestly, it's come largely out of necessity. So we've got a lot of industry in this state, and it spans across almost every county, both urban and rural areas. We have a $19 billion hardwood industry and about a $9 billion bourbon industry that's all built off of that white oak. So huge economic contribution and about 57,000 jobs in the state. I tell folks direct jobs, 1 in every 160 Kentuckians is directly employed in that forest sector. And so we have this huge thing that we want to keep strong so that we have those markets for our landowners and farmers and woodland owners. And so them being able to have places they can sell that timber when it becomes mature so that they can manage those woods. And so the cool thing about our forests is that they are really big into succession and they require disturbance. And what that means is, trees are constantly dying and falling down. And so being able to harvest, we can simulate that succession and disturbance regime. So that way we can have a nice clean slate to where those trees can grow back under a lot of competition. And that's how you grow really high quality timber. And so being able to have markets for that to go into, because we can grow all the timber in the world, but if we don't have a great place for those, then the landowners and farmers won't have that revenue stream. We won't be able to make things out of renewable natural wood. We'd be making everything out of non-renewable plastic or something like that, right? And so having these markets allows us to reduce impact and be able to keep a lot of value here local through all that manufacturing. And so we're really excited about anything that opens up new markets for our industry and woodland owners and farmers, right? And so that's where being able to take things like mass timber, which is essentially really large wooden buildings and structural components, we can be able to have a new market where our state tree, yellow poplar, can be able to be used. And we can build schools and office buildings out of that material. Another really cool market that we've opened up here lately is through maple flooring. So we love maple syrup. It tastes very sweet. It's great. But then with the wood, we've got very limited markets. And so we need to have new vigorous maple trees. And so we have to be able to harvest those old ones. And we can turn those into flooring. We actually have an industry in Kentucky that just became a Maple Flooring Manufacturing Association member. And what that means is now they're eligible to put in a bid on middle school and high school basketball courts, any kind of public project that they previously were excluded from because they weren't a member of that association and meeting those requirements.
Well, that's really cool. Yeah, I'll say I've been doing some taste tests, and I can't tell the difference between oak and maple flooring.
Yes.
Maybe because they've already put the polyurethane on. I don't know, but it's good to hear that there's some potential there. But just to back up real quick to the plant side,
Yes.
I heard you say this word hardwood.
Yes.
And we know we have. I assume that the existence of hardwood implies the existence of softwood. So is Kentucky like a hardwood state? Like, is that kind of our vibe, or are we a blend? And like, if not, where are some of those softwood states?
We're a very hardwood vibe state. And so we've got all of these oaks and hickories and maples and about 118 different species. So diversity is great, but we really have so much to the hardwoods. And when you look at the softwood species, we're talking all of our needles. So our cedars, eastern red cedar, and then we've got different loblolly pine and shortleaf pine and eastern white pine, stuff like that. It's less than 5% of our forest composition across the entire state. And so it's really limited. And with that, we use that material, but it's just so minuscule in the other volumes of yellow poplar and red oak and species like that we've got.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it sounds like you're trying to think about this product that has a lot of value, but maybe people out in the world don't piece that together or see that or think of it in our modern context. And it's probably because the softwood and the plastic are taking up these big market segments that previously hardwood probably would have taken up. That's really, really interesting. And I think so. So you mentioned poplar, maple. Are there any other kind of key species that, at the moment at least, are at the core of this thought? And I'm not trying to. I am very into woodworking, both the aesthetic and practical purposes. But anybody else, feel free to jump in. I will dominate this conversation.
I'm gonna take this into like a plant media thing.
Really weird direction.
Yeah, so like I'm interested in this too. So like, don't give me too much room.
There's so many opportunities, and so we've got the yellow poplar is the one that was the no-brainer, right? It's our most abundant tree species throughout our region. We've got a lot of volume. It grows incredibly fast. It's lighter than pine and stronger than pine, and so all of those things, it's like, okay, that one makes a lot of sense. So then it gets a little more challenging on what other species make sense, and red maple is one of those that it's on the verge of economically being usable, right? And so at times it might be because of the cost of maples affordable enough to put in, but that one's kind of a stretch. And so we didn't spend a whole lot of time on maple, but we did some testing with it. We really tried to focus in on species like sycamore, which we think of typically as a riparian species, but as it's growing up into the ridge line and going up the slope, there's so few markets for that species, and it's so pretty, and so there's opportunity to use some of that volume. And then there's things like sweet gum, and the big thing with sweet gum is we see the pine belt of down in Alabama and Georgia, Louisiana, down in the south, where they've got all of that pine. They've got very little in hardwood down there. They have some, And that's where they're kind of the inverse of what we've got going on. So down there, they're producing southern yellow pine cross-laminated timber panels. We've got some of those companies looking at Kentucky right now because they've seen that we've got yellow poplar approved in the building codes. And so now they see this as another species that they can be able to possibly produce these panels out of. And they see the additional strength, the fact that hardwoods don't exude resin or pitch out of them like the softwoods do. And so there's different aspects like that. And with sweet gum kind of bridging that gap between the pine belt and where we are located here in Kentucky, that's a very low value, low cost species that we see a lot of opportunity with. And then there's a few others like hickory potentially. And so we're really looking at underutilized species that we're not utilizing enough of right now. And so this allows us to be able to use those, and that allows us to grow oak on the landscape, and it ties into White Oak Initiative type of goals. And so when we have our bourbon industry supported while being able to do all of these, it's one of those few win-win-wins. And it kind of is tough for me because we've got a new high school in Harrison County right down the road that they're building. And I feel like a failure because we didn't build it out of yellow poplar or CLT. It's like, we have this opportunity so at the next school we can build it out of Kentucky wood.
Yeah.
That's very
Yeah.
cool. I was
go
going to
ahead.
ask a question with all this, and I could be wrong, but using, you mentioned about the people using plastic versus using this wood, and you want to encourage people because it's actually safer, right? My husband's a Lexington firefighter, and they talk about that a lot of times of how houses are now being built with all plastics. Plastics continuously burn. They release chemicals when they're burning. So it's making structures more dangerous by using those plastic materials versus if we could go back to using actual wood materials. So that's
Is that a perception thing? I know that marketing goes into a lot of this. One industry markets a certain way versus another. But at one point in history, maybe I was off base. I was like, oh, a real wood floor. Oh my gosh, the cost analysis. But how do those numbers work out now? I mean, if you're comparing like a solid wood floor, which I've always loved in any form, wide, narrow, whatever. But I mean, how does that work out now as far as competitiveness compared to other flooring options?
Absolutely. I just want to take a moment. What Jessica was hitting on is so exactly right. And I've heard that from other fire professionals around the country about how we've shifted so much to these different fossil fuel-based materials in our home. And what that does when that ignites, it is very, very dangerous, as you all know. And that's something that you hear firefighters and the fire community talking about a lot. And so that's one of the things with wood that we really see as a benefit is that it is natural and you don't have all of these toxins that are coming out as it's burning. And so there's a lot of value, think about off-gassing too, right? If you've got all of those chemicals leaching out into the air constantly while you're in there breathing and doing whatever you do in your home, right? And so going throughout each day. And so if we look at then the cost analysis, Ray, we've got flooring is expensive. If we go and we price out the plastic flooring and we put that up against the real oak flooring, it's like 4 times the cost to put down real hardwood floor. But the difference of it is, though, in 10 years, that plastic flooring is wore out and it's going to the landfill, and you've got to buy it again. And then it's got the environmental side too. And that's something that the front page of local newspapers have talked a lot about polyfluoroalkyl substances, what we call PFAS. So PFAS and microplastics, we don't know enough about them yet, but what we do know causes a lot of alarm is these forever chemicals. They stay in our cells and they're in our bodies. And so it's in the fish in the river and it's in our water and we know it. And we don't have to worry about that when we use a natural wood material, a plant-based material, then we avoid those polyfluoroalkyl substances. And so what those are, it's like your waterproofing chemicals and nonstick cookware, those types of forever chemicals. But then even just the microplastics, they're accumulating as we know. And so with wood, we avoid that entirely, and we're able to have natural, biodegradable materials that we don't have to worry about those off-gassing chemicals or any of that environmental harm from the landfill. It's just so many winds, it's hard to even keep track of how many, right, as we count them up, that we get from using our natural material.
Now, Chad, I will say I've had a splinter from wood before.
So this is true.
You're
Some
underselling.
of them can be pretty tough, right?
My dad worked at a sawmill, Chad. It's funny that when you phrase it out like that, and I love being around the sawmill. It was an old circle saw. It was pre-bandsaw. Okay,
Yes,
it goes
sir.
way back, but he always said that whole wood cuts, because that's back when particle board and wood technology started really taking off and doing some neat things. But to him, he said full wood cuts were like the Whole Foods of the timber world. He loved those solid cuts, those solid products, and that's always kind of stuck with me. That Whole Foods approach. He said that's what the cuts like that are of solid wood.
Absolutely. And we
it's good
really
stuff.
don't talk about the value of those products enough. Like it's expensive, but what you're really getting, there's so much value there beyond the dollars. It'll
Yeah, it's
last
amazing.
years.
Yeah, it's something else. And, so many people, they'll renovate a house or whatever. And we go through trends, I guess, as a society. And at one point, I guess these beautiful floors and made out of, all sorts of wood species, was carpeted over by this beautiful yellow. I don't want to describe the color too much because it's not very flattering, but all the, carpet. And then we went through a phase where all that was being pulled back up and people were rediscovering that beautiful hardwood under there. So it's really interesting preferences over time. And hardwood floors has always struck me as a real good kind of, benchmark of that we go through these phases. Things go in and out of fashion. It's really fascinating how it changes over
I feel
time.
like it's fate that we have you on right now because we are redoing our upstairs. I live in an old 1800s farmhouse and it has all wood floors and they're beautiful. And we're going to get to the point here in another couple of weeks where we get like prices on redoing the upstairs that is currently just basically an attic. And I'm going to be like, now listen, my good buddy Chad told me that we're going to have to replace that laminate flooring in 10 years. So you give me wood or you give me nothing.
That's right.
And then when I get the bill, they're going to be like, are you sending it to Chad? And I'm going to be like,
Well,
worth it, Alexis. Totally worth it. Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm just going to be like, it won't match the downstairs.
It's got to match. That's exactly right.
Yeah, that would be like the thing. Like, okay, that's reasonable. Not
that sounds good. Yeah.
not the chemical or any of the other implications. So one thing on the hardwood floor, I know you said there's some other technologies that I want to definitely talk about, but on the flooring itself, did I catch earlier that you were talking about different ages of maples and their applicability or fast growing versus slower growing maples and their applicability for flooring? And it reminds me a little bit of like I've always known pine as a soft, it is a softwood in the botanical sense, but a soft wood where if you went up with a quarter, you could put a ding into it, or your fingernail, you could put a ding into it. But I know that there's some old houses that have pine flooring that's really hard. So I'm just curious, like, is that a botanical thing? Is that a species thing, an age thing? What's the deal with that?
So there's a few things going on there. And so with young maple trees, I know just enough about maple syrup production to be dangerous. I've got a few friends who do it, and I like to enjoy it more than I like to make it. But young, vigorous maple trees pump out a lot more sap than even a large tree with multiple holes. And so young, vigorous trees, they're great for maple production. As that tree grows up and it gets older and it starts to decline in health, then that's a great time to be able to harvest that tree and then turn it into hardwood flooring. And then many young maple trees can come back in its place. We live in this great deciduous temperate rainforest, and so these trees, they're just growing back on their own. We don't even have to do anything. We just cut them down and they grow back, which we're very fortunate to have that. And so we can be able to produce our maple syrup with the young trees and older trees with the flooring. There was a second part of that question that I think I've already forgotten, though.
Well, it was just, like there's old pines, old pine floors
Yes.
that are really hard, and
Thank
is that
you.
just an old growth?
I've wondered about that, Brett. I've heard like myths from like retailers. They're like, the pine of today is not like the pine of 100 years ago. And I'm like,
And this is very true. And
is it?
so
Oh,
what it
okay.
is about the rotation age. And so when you've got trees that are about 20 years old in pine, all of those trees have what's called juvenile wood in them. And at the cellular level, the angle of the cell wall is much steeper. And so because of that, you get a lot more shrinkage than you do in length. And you don't have that at all when you get into normal mature wood. So about 20 years on, it starts changing the steepness of that angle of the cell wall. And so it's kind of crazy, but you don't want to have juvenile wood in things. So that's where you want to have something that's grown at least 25 to 30 years before you're harvesting it. And so a lot of times these thinnings that they're doing in these pine stands, they're going through 15 years and they're getting all that material. Well, it's full of juvenile wood. So you get a fencing board and it, crooks to the left or right and twists on you. You wonder, why did it do that? Oftentimes it's because of juvenile wood. And so when we're talking about these old pine floors that were really popular, a lot of that was sugar pine coming out of the Northwest, or it was longleaf pine, which both of those are known for having a lot of rosin in them. And so they're considered hard pines. And so that is what's going on there. So you got the old growth nature of it, but then you also have the fact that they're harder pines, more rosinous species.
Well, does that apply as well to, like, those maples and stuff? Will they do the same, like, having the older ones harvesting an older one versus a younger? Because 'Cause I'm thinking about I also live in a late 1800s farmhouse, and, we installed in one room new flooring and kinda matched with the old flooring, and I feel like my new flooring gets dented a lot, faster than the old one does, and the same toy tractors are hitting each room equally,
Yes.
right?
Scientific
So as you were talking
measurements.
about that, I was like, "Oh, is that, besides just the pines, like the softwoods, is that what you see in the other trees
There
types as
is
well?"
there is some variation even within species. And so like if they used soft maple, which is more of your red maples, that would dent a lot harder than a sugar maple. But even within sugar maple, there's a range in hardness. And so some of those have grown in more competitive conditions, and some of those trees will be as hard as rock. And then you go into some just a little ways away from that, and they can be much softer in density. And so I can't explain, all of it, but there's something to that competition and tight growth that and longer rotations that does have more density.
So that would be rated on the Janka hardness scale. Is
That's
that right?
correct.
Okay, I
Yes.
just wanted to flex that because I saw it one time.
Very
just,
good.
Sorry.
I don't have any idea what the numbers mean, but yeah, no. The thing you're talking about with just for plant nerd people, and I correct me if I'm wrong because I have a lot of half-cocked understandings of things that I love to cross-check with people who know what they're talking about, like you. But that, like, so in a what we would call an old growth setting, or even just a more competitive, fuller forest that hasn't been, clear cut, there's this competition which limits the amount of light that's available and other resources that are available to those trees. And so as a result, they grow more slowly. And in other words, each annual ring is a little bit smaller. It's not as thick, closer together, which then over time translates into a higher level of hardness. Is that a pretty decent summary?
That's exactly what is going on. And so those tighter growth rings, more dense, there's a little bit of variation on some species. So like our oaks, that's one where the late wood, if you've got a stronger band of that, a wider band of that late wood, then you will end up having less dense, because you've got the early wood and late wood forests have different sizes. But so generally, tighter growth rings, everything is going to be more dense. Our oaks kind of break that rule a little bit because they've got those big ring porous vessels in them.
Huh. That's really cool. Yeah. I think I often think about like just how almost unimaginable seeing the old growth forests would be to me or to us. Now it's
Yes.
like a thing that we just can't understand. Like like 89-cent gasoline to a Zoomer. There was a time.
Right.
Uh,
It is
It did
very
exist.
challenging to get to a place that has some real virgin forest left. And I've got an opportunity years ago to go to Lily Cornet Woods, and there's a patch of old growth there that it feels like you're in Jurassic Park or something.
Wow.
The species of shrubbery around there are bigger than you've seen of any type before. And so it just everything is on a larger scale, and you're down in the low bottoms along the trails there, and everything blasting out of the little openings is just ice cold air coming out of there. It's just amazing. And you're under the hemlock woods, and so you can see there's very limited places to go, but we do have the Lily Cornet Woods as one great place to get to see a little bit of that, a glimpse of the past, if you will, because everything else we're just seeing, a few scattered old growth trees here and there. And
It's
so
on my list of places to get to here
it is
in
very
Kentucky. And
worthwhile.
yeah, I just
Also,
need to
I
settle
like
that.
to tell folks Robinson Forest, it is mostly a second growth forest. And so that kind of blows people's minds. They get there and they're like, these are huge trees, and they just automatically assume it's a virgin forest. And I tell folks, well, this is evidence right here. It shows you that we can do clear cutting and harvesting and do it well and end up with forests that grow back really strong and healthy. And using best management practices, we can do all of that in a good way. But that's one of the great things, though, is you see that the opportunity for our forests to just grow back on their own, the fact that we can then use management to be able to help grow those forests, and they can continue to provide for us. And that's why it's so important that we take care of them and focus on forest health.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, so we've talked about, as far as like on the product side, imagine this, the marketing person's like, let's get back to the products. So you mentioned that kind of the hardwood flooring thing, which I think is familiar, and everyone else was flexing about their 1800s farmhouse. I'm in a 1950s baby boomer ranch, but I do have red oak
Red
original
oak, yes.
floors.
And it's amazing to me, there was a time when red oak was more valuable than white oak in the 80s. And now we see a time when we don't appreciate our red oak enough. There's things we could be doing, like quarter sawing it and showing that ray flecking. There's so many opportunities to market red oak better that we're not taking advantage of. We could have a full-time hardwood marketing person, I think, in this state. Other states do. And it would be great if we could, right?
Yeah, that sounds intriguing, Chad. Sycamore is another of the you can quarter saw it and get some really crazy grain. I have a couple of picture frames that I've made from quarter sawn sycamore that I got from a local sawmill, and it has a cool vibe. There's a couple of furniture makers that work not exclusively but heavily in quarter sawn sycamore because it's just so unique.
It's the prettiest. Absolutely. Quarter sawn oak is beautiful, but I agree with you. It is as pretty as it gets. And it's way underappreciated and underused.
Yeah. And so as far as some other uses and some other products that you all are thinking about or that you're working with folks, so you mentioned the hardwood flooring, and there's the other species to explore and other things there. Am I correct in saying that there's an initiative and interest pursuit of using some of our hardwoods as framing lumber? So in other words, in lieu of, or in addition to maybe some of those softwood, yellow pine, or whatever studs that we see from Home Depot?
Absolutely. And so one of the great things that we've been looking into is cross-laminated timber panels. And so with the ANSI APA PRG 320, that 2025 standard included our state tree. And so now we can use yellow poplar to make 40-foot long wall panels for schools and roof panels. And so we can be able to build schools at a much faster rate, which is really important for construction timelines nowadays. And so being able to have all of the panel production pressed up off-site somewhere at a factory, they can use what's called computer numeric routers, CNCs, and they can be able to put all of the doorways and windows, utilities in. And so all of that's done off-site. So when they get onto the construction job, they're able to put all those panels in place. And so what would take 3 or 4 months to erect, they could have done in a few days.
And is that, help me imagine what this, like, is that something that is in lieu of drywall and like framing and then drywall on top of that? Or is that addition? Like what is that? Do I see the panel?
Right. And so it depends on consumer preference. On my take on it is you'd want to leave that as the exposed, and that's your finish, right? It looks much better. Biophilia is a term that architects use a lot more, and it explains the connection we have to natural materials and the fact that your cortisol and stress levels are reduced when you're around wood and natural materials and out in scenery and nature. And so biophilia is something they talk about all the time. And I find that in agriculture, we never talk about it. And there's so much opportunity to leave the wood as the finish. There's a cost savings from that too, if you don't have to put the sheetrock on there at the end. And then with normal fire suppression systems you would have in place, then you'd have the same fire rating or higher than a typical structure. And so a great opportunity to be able to use local material, be able to reduce any kind of we have this huge market opportunity with this.
And so what species would go into those types of panels?
So yellow poplar is our state tree, and so that is the one that is specified right now, but we see other species like basswood and red oak and hickory, sweet gum, and sycamore. Lots of those underutilized species that we have out there that we don't have a lot of markets. This allows a way to be able to use those. And so being able to build schools and different buildings is one of the best ways we can use that material, and it stores that wood for the length of that building use.
Man, I would love to replace all of the drywall in my house with hickory, and then have like either a maple or red oak floor. Sounds like it's just like the bio. I'm feeling the biophilia, putting the feel in biophilia right now. That's so. Oh man, that's so cool. It feels like a modern take on a fairly older traditional approach to construction, and like the way that we in our buildings interact with each other. And I think it also fits interestingly with some of what you see with modular building more broadly in the construction industry, with things like concrete, precast concrete.
Yes.
Or I know I saw our former commissioner of ag, Ryan Quarles, who now leads BCTC the Bluegrass Community and Technical College System, and they're talking about some of the modular construction stuff, and thinking about, he said something like AI still can't build houses. And I was like, okay, he's still got the political streak with the slogans. And I loved it. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's just such a cool concept.
Is it like available for, the person who's redoing their upstairs, and, or is it something only for more like commercial industry right now? Would listeners be able to seek it out at this point, or are the markets not quite there yet?
Good question, Alexis. So in the softwood, you can get a Doug fir, you can get a Sitka spruce, a southern yellow pine, or you can even, for about 60% of the cost of what we can manufacture them here in the U.S., we have companies over in Europe that are shipping these overseas, and they're a lot more vertically integrated, and they've been doing this for a lot longer than we have. And so that's one of the battles we're fighting right now, is we have facilities here in the U.S. that are making this product, but they're already at a heck of a competitive disadvantage, as they're 40% more expensive than their European counterparts. And so that's one of the things that we want to try to help with here, is getting industry set up using this local low valued yellow poplar and being able to have this market. Now, there's some folks that might view that as competition, but we're hoping that they'll see this as another mass timber product that can be made, and it'll all be viewed, well under that whole mass timber umbrella. And so we've tried to have a holistic mass timber message from the beginning, because so much of this is softwood driven. And the reality is, using softwoods in mass timber is a good thing. It's a great thing, and we should be glad that we're doing that. But we live in a state where we have so little softwood. That's where we had to start playing into the hardwoods and researching how we can use those more.
So is that, this is maybe too granular for the podcast. Is that why is it cheaper from Europe? Is it just like a volume and efficiency thing, or
That's part of it. And so you think about automation and having a facility that's run by maybe 8 people and very sophisticated manufacturing. And they've perfected it, and we're still trying to play catch up despite a lot of our folks going over there and seeing those facilities and touring those places. They're still playing catch up and trying to get more vertically integrated over here.
Huh. Wow.
We've
Well,
talked about
can
oh, go ahead, Alexis.
No, you go ahead. I'm going to
No.
take it off subject, so you go ahead.
Before Alexis takes us in the other direction, I mean, where's the future, or is it a combination of these two things as far as, I briefly mentioned whole wood cuts versus all of the composite type products? I mean, what's the future look like when we're considering both of those things as it involves wood? I know it's all of the above right now, isn't it? Or is there a certain trends that you kind of look into the crystal ball and see for the future? Or
Good question, Ray. And so I kind of look towards the past a little bit and get a little bit of indication of where we've been. And so we can see that we've had, and so there's a lot of opportunity going forward, but we've got, I just completely had my brain lock up on me. I'm so sorry. Please.
Well, sometimes when you know so much
The
about
amount of
something,
times
yeah,
that
the
happens.
amount of
So
Yeah.
relatable,
Oh,
Chad.
all the time.
So relatable.
For me, it's
So
caffeine.
times. 18 times today alone.
Yeah.
Today has already been a day, so
Yeah.
totally fine.
You were thinking about just like
I was
where you
just-
see trends going, right, Ray? That was
Yeah.
kind
yes.
of like,
Yeah, the trends
and how
all
this
that.
can fit in maybe to some
Right.
other trends
And
that are happening.
so composite materials and being able to engineer wood products, that's something we're going to see more of.
Is
And
it? Okay.
solid wood products, I think, always have their place. They're just so expensive. It's getting
Yeah.
harder and harder. And so they might start getting thinner, and hardwood flooring layers are trying to find ways that you can have a system that, somebody could be able to install it themselves, possibly. I know hardwood flooring installation folks may not like, that aspect if a consumer can be able to install it themselves. But there's things like that how do you make hardwood flooring less expensive? And it's really
Mhm.
challenging. There's
Oh,
no
yeah.
way. And then, so like the install is one of those places. And but that's a very sophisticated system to get something that can lock in and somebody can install themselves. And so there's no easy ways. And I try to remind myself whenever I'm like, gosh, how can we use more wood? How can we get, more market for flooring? And that's where there's got to be some type of system that's made that people can be able to have a lock-in system where that groove will fit in and somebody
Yeah.
can be able to install it
What
like they can a laminate system.
I was going to say, what have I seen? It's they tout it as a natural product, but I think it's bamboo that I'm thinking of that has a super higher than hickory, a super high hardness rating, but it's a natural type of product, but it's a composite. I believe that's bamboo, isn't it? I don't think it was a
Bamboo
hard.
is one of those, and I'm not against bamboo. What I tell folks though is it's if you're using it where you're growing it, it's a lot more sustainable, and so that's one of the things that if we've got all this hardwood here, it makes a lot more sense to make flooring or cutting boards out of that, and the local jobs that come from that, and none of that is added with bamboo. Whereas there's a lot of sense in using that over where it's grown, and that should be celebrated as a sustainable material.
Yeah.
Hempwood is one of those that gets kind of contentious with folks at times because they
Hempwood.
want the attention in the flooring world that they're doing really good with their marketing, right? And I think it's a great thing. And so the two, they shouldn't be viewed as negative, right? It's like they're both bio-based products, and your marketing, you should look at them as what they both are. This is both great, natural products. And so that's I always try to remind people that when they get seeing other things that are having great market opportunity and they're getting received well by consumers, say, well, look at what they're doing in ways that you can kind of emulate that. They've done great with their marketing.
Well, I want to come back to that, but as we get as we prepare to wind down, I want to make sure Alexis has an opportunity to corner you about her own
I'm
interests.
afraid.
Because I'm also interested in it too. So
Yeah,
Alexis, you want to let her?
I'm
let
not
her
necessarily expecting like an answer. It's more of a like,
Oh,
have
man.
you heard of?
But what is
this
your deal? Why aren't you
crazy?
doing
What's
this?
how do you feel about? We had some chats with some in Ray's County, the horticulturist who works for and I just had a moment where I blanked. Remind me it used to be Color Point Ray. Who is it now?
Chad, yeah.
Chad, yeah.
Another
So he's
Chad.
another Chad, yeah. So he was talking about peat is a big topic in the horticulture world because it is a non-renewable, like really kind of a non-renewable resource, right? And like we're depleting these bogs and blah blah blah, and but it's such a big part of the horticulture industry. And for listeners, like peat is what makes like your potting soil. It's like one of the primary ingredients in potting soil. And so he was saying they've been like on the way to eliminating, and I think in some of their mixes have eliminated peat and put back in this media substrate made from southern yellow pine, and the one specifically he mentioned is called hydrofiber. And actually they sent me, I like emailed them, was like, tell me more, and they have a product sample kit that they sent me, and it was like all these different sizes of this product. And I was just curious, like, is that like in your brain anywhere that is happening and that it could be potential? Is it possible for like our hardwoods? Or I mean, I was almost like my brain started firing in a million directions, but when we talk about like cedar or Virginia pine or a lot of these things that are like coming up in old fields, is there potential to clear them out to allow for our hardwoods and utilize them some way that maybe we aren't already? I don't know. I have a billion questions. That's probably a whole podcast episode in itself, but like mostly I'm just thinking, is there any potential for something like that out of Kentucky products?
Absolutely. It always amazes me how this universe works. And so there is a researcher at UK that we've been working with, Qing Lu.
Qing Lu?
Yes.
Oh my God. She's in my department, so I'm a little like, holy crap, I need to email Qing Lu. Awesome. Dr. Ying, yeah.
And so she is looking into some opportunities for being able to replace peat moss using some of and so we gave her some samples of hardwood bark and hardwood sawdust. And so they're working towards trying to replace that peat moss with
I'm going to bring her my little sample kit and be like, Qing Lu, have you seen this? Do you want to look at it together? You just made my day in so many ways. I appreciate you.
So what are the in those initial samples? What were some of the stuff that you all were like, man, try this. What were some of I know you said bark, but was it a specific species?
So cherry and maple, and we have a lot of oak that we're sawing up, and so those were three of the big ones. We did have a little bit of softwood material and some cedar that we were able to give them.
And would those mostly be byproducts of other processes?
And that's one of the really wild things about the hardwood industry is here we are, we're struggling to make lumber and sell lumber. We don't use enough of it, but there is so much demand and interest in our residues. And so economic
our trash, people want our trash.
We're going to have to chop it up and make it trash to make it valuable. Yeah.
It's approaching that point, I think, economically.
Yeah.
That's
something else.
The most requested that we get from economic development is information on sawdust availability, on bark availability.
Mm-hmm.
And
producer of sawdust.
Yes.
My master's research was in I did hydroponic cucumbers, but specifically I was looking at media, and we were using shredded like cedar and comparing it to perlite, comparing it to just like a normal media that we would use, like a barky media, and like initial results were that it was comparable, and we could use kind of this like shredded up stuff from the sawmill that really wasn't a value to them and use it to grow some really nice English cucumbers. So it's pretty crazy what can be done. That's so exciting to hear. Thank you for indulging me.
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of neat, some of the products we're making, I'll try to leave the trade names out, but compressed fire logs and a lot of charcoal We've got some bagged animal bedding shavings and things like that. And so there's different residues. One of the things that I think surprises folks the most is how much wood flour is used. So you see cellulose on your Parmesan cheese, and it's wood flour often in there. And different, fast food places have a lot of cellulose in there as well.
Huh.
Yeah,
Fiber.
I recently did the a barbecue basics course through UK Extension as a participant, and I have and my brother has, and they used a pellet grill which uses these compressed wood pellets. And PSA to anyone out there who just didn't realize it, when you go and buy with whatever brand hickory flavored pellets, the overwhelming majority of the wood in there is not hickory. It's actually mostly oak around here. Depends on where you are. So just a little PSA from someone who watched a bunch of videos.
You're being duped is what he's saying.
Don't let big wood pellet make you think that. No, I'm just kidding. But so I think, we sometimes, usually at my pressing, will delve a little into maybe a little touchy-feely or bigger questions, bigger importance or whatever. And so obviously we're really excited about all the stuff that you're doing. But if you had to explain why someone should care about this, why someone should care about this opportunity to, use some of our wood products in certain ways, or to manage our forests in a way that has these, multiple benefits, and maybe even just almost like, why is it that you get so excited to do this kind of stuff? What would you say?
Question. So just to kind of recap it all, when you think about, we've got these woods that keep us all healthy. They filter our air, our water. We can make stuff out of them. They even grow back on their own. They're contributing $19 billion. It should be $25 billion, but we keep losing these industries because we're not making stuff out of wood. And so I think that's the big takeaway, is that we really take for granted how much these forests that cover half our state's landscape are really giving us. They're giving us $20 billion a year, plus a $9 billion bourbon industry. It's like, whatever you like, if it's basketball, if it's horses, if it's, bourbon, all of those things, the Kentucky things, they're all tied to this forestry and to the use of these wood products and taking care of these forests. And so I think that's the important thing, is that we think about the forest health, but that we also value using these wood products and managing these woods so that the next future generations can inherit that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons in both the even just the essential facts about trees that grow slower are denser and harder and stronger, and that sometimes the thing that's a little more expensive now has all of these other cascading benefits and things coming out of it. I think, I don't know, I just find so much wisdom in our and so much human essential human narrative in our relationship with trees and with the forests. And I think in Kentucky, as you pointed out, we have a really special relationship with them still to this day, which is really, really, really amazing. So well, Chad, I can't thank you enough for joining us to talk through all of the cool stuff that you have going on. You have made Alexis's day, which is hard to do. She is hard to impress, and you have lit her up like a Christmas tree, which is great. Yeah. Is there anywhere that if people wanted to follow along to kind of see what you have going on, or events or anything like that you wanted to mention for the moment?
Yes. So on social media, we have a University of Kentucky Wood e-news page, a University of Kentucky Robinson Wood Utilization Center page, and we've got websites online that you can Google for either of those. From the Woods Today is a weekly forestry show on Wednesdays that we're doing, and so that's another place that y'all might catch me. I really appreciate y'all having me on today.
Yeah, there's several things that I'm already kind of thinking we'd like to have you back on, and we're gonna connect with other folks from out at the Robinson Center. There's so much cool work you all have been doing out there in between major flooding events and everything else, that all the other challenges that get thrown at us. So
yes.
Thank you so much for everything you do for the state and for our forests. And if you want to follow us, you can follow us on Instagram at Horticulture Podcast. You can also email us. We have that dedicated Gmail account, horticulturepodcast@gmail.com. You can connect with us either place. If you get a chance to rate us, leave a review, let us know what you think. You can also email us with ideas you have. And until next time, we appreciate you being with us, and we'll see you down the road.